you have this problem where there are words in one language that maybe have 3 or 4 meanings, and the other language, they might have 3 or 4 meanings, but they're not always, and one of those overlap and the other 3 don't, right? What we want to do is try to find out what is the word, in this case in Hebrew, and what does it mean in English? Amen. And in this case, the word tzedakah is a very hard word to translate. Yeah. It's hard to translate into English because it means many different things. Tzedakah could be righteousness, meaning I follow the Torah. Yeah. Tzedakah could be charity. I give to poor people. That's called tzedakah. Right? It has a bunch of different meanings. It could be true judgment in a court case. Right? Well, which one is it here if we're dealing with the Hebrew word? Now, to be honest, what we need to do is we need to look at the Greek, translate it back into Hebrew using the Septuagint, and then ask what does that Hebrew word mean in the Septuagint? Wow. So
can I read this? Let me read this. This is from Elijah V. Soloveitchik.
Yeah.
It's what he says. For they will be satisfied. Oh, the gladness of those who hunger and thirst for tzedakah, for they will be satisfied. He says, for they will be satisfied. And in the Talmud, let's see, he says he's Baba Batra 10a. Come and see that the ways of God are not like the ways of flesh and blood. These are the ways of flesh and blood. A man brings a large gift to the king. Perhaps it is accepted. Perhaps it is not. Perhaps he will see the face of the king. Perhaps he will not. However, the Holy One, blessed be he, is not like this. If a man gives a coin to a poor man, he is worthy to receive divine presence. As it is said, Psalms 17:15, I, in righteousness, will see your face. When I awake, I will be satisfied with your likeness. This is the meaning. Because of the charity that I gave to the poor, I will be worthy to see your face and be satisfied in the world to come, in the awakening, that is, in the immortality of the soul. How do you feel? How do you feel about that one?
So here's what he's done. And what was the verse? Psalm 17?
Yep. He's gone to 17:15.
So 17:15, so here's a bit of a problem, okay? Here's where it gets a bit complicated. So what he's done is he's taken the word tzedakah, which in medieval Hebrew, and he's actually past the Middle Ages, he's in the Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment, but he's taking the meaning in that period between, let's say, Second Temple Hebrew and modern Hebrew. You have tzedakah, and in modern Hebrew, almost exclusively meaning charity.
Yep.
So when he hears the word tzedakah, he doesn't even think in biblical Hebrew terms. What does it mean in the Tanakh? He says, what does it mean in post-biblical Hebrew? It means charity, meaning charity given to the poor, to the point where you have a little box and it has a little slot in it, and you go to almost any supermarket in Israel, and next to the cashier will be this, back when people used coins.
Yes.
And you take your change and you put it in the tzedakah box.
Yes.
Tzedakah is charity.
And this is where you're saying this is the context for him.
That's 100% how he's interpreting it. Now, is he right or wrong? We could have that conversation, but that's what he's doing, and that's why they don't translate the word tzedakah. Bear in mind, he's writing this in Hebrew, and they're translating it into English. And so they decided, wait, if we translate this as righteousness, it makes no sense.
Got it.
If we translate as charity, people won't understand what we're talking about.
So you're telling me
let's leave it in Hebrew, so anybody who knows Hebrew will know tzedakah is charity. Right? Whereas in the Tanakh, that's not always the case. And now, is tzedakah even the correct word? So here's what I've done. In accordance, I go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, and I have the word dikai osunen, which is, I hover over it, and I can see at the bottom here, it says righteousness, justice, and okay, so that's where they're getting the word righteousness. Okay, and then Dalitz translates that as tzedakah. But I don't really care that much what Dalitz translates it as, because he could be wrong. What he's doing is exactly what I'm about to show you.
Right.
Although I have a computer to do it, for him it was a lot harder. So I right-click on this, and I do search for lexeme, and I get that in the New Testament, there's 86 places where this word, dikai osune, is the feminative singular noun. And what I find out is, or what I want to find out is, not how is it used in the New Testament. That's important. But what I really want to see is how is it used in the Tanakh. And so now I go over to the Septuagint. And I search in the Septuagint.
Folks,
and I find
the tap tap? The tap tap.
This is the tap tap.
This is the tap tap, folks.
Yeah. And I find this word is used in the Septuagint 13 times. And then I look to see what word does it translate. And I have here in the Septuagint, Judges 5:11, and it's translated as tzidkot. right? Which is plural of tzedakah. And that's in Tobit, which doesn't have an English parallel. Actually, let me do this here. Did I do the wrong word here? No, there we go. I'd done this before and I got a different result. So that sometimes happens. Okay, here we go. So here I did this search here and I got, for the same word here, dikaiosune, I get in the Tanakh, 324 instances of this word in the Septuagint. And then I say, okay, what word does this translate in the Tanakh? In other words, they translated the Septuagint very mechanically, right? In their head, or maybe actually on a piece of parchment or papyrus, they had Hebrew word and the Greek equivalent, Hebrew word, Greek equivalent, Hebrew word, Greek equivalent, to the point where sometimes Professor Emmanuel Tov shows this in a brilliant book he wrote of how the Septuagint is translated. Sometimes they translate it so mechanically it doesn't make sense in Greek. You've got to translate it back into Hebrew to say what were we thinking,
yeah,
right? Because they take that word, even though it doesn't mean that in the context in the Hebrew, but that's their mechanical translation. Not always, but sometimes. So here I could see dikaiosune is Hebrew tzedakah. And he believed in Yehovah, and he reckoned it for him tzedakah, righteousness. Well, righteousness doesn't mean charity there, right? But it is the word tzedakah. So we have to see how, and there's more sophisticated ways to do it. We don't really have time to get into it. Here again, Genesis 18:19, same word, tzedakah. Here again in Genesis 19:19, we have chesed, which is a whole different ball game. Don't have time to get into it. Chesed is a powerful word, so packed with meaning. Here's nikayon, cleanliness of the hands, but often it translates the word tzedakah.
So in other words, you have a number of different Hebrew words that they use.
Absolutely. Well, there's a number of different Hebrew words that are translated by this Greek word.
Right.
And so that's where things get complicated. So you can see there that we can learn a lot by this method, but then you still have to determine, okay, which word is it in Greek? Or which word is it in Hebrew that is translated? So here's the point. Which word did Yeshua speak if he spoke in Hebrew? That's the question. Did he speak tzedakah? Did he speak chesed? We don't know. We weren't there. What Delitzsch is doing is saying, well, in the context, it sounds like tzedakah, and that's often the Greek translation of the word tzedakah. That's what he's doing.
Okay.
And now, to jump from that to tzedakah, meaning charity, I think is a big jump. I don't know that that's what he meant. Because a lot of times, now let's do the word tzedakah. Now that we know what the word in Hebrew probably was, then we have to ask the question, what does tzedakah mean in Hebrew? And tzedakah in Hebrew, okay, could it mean charity? Possibly in Proverbs, not so clear. You might be kind of reading something back from later Hebrew into it. But there's no question that most places in the Tanakh, tzedakah means to faithfully follow the Torah. That is it means righteousness. And what is righteousness? Righteousness is following the Torah. Let's look, for example, and let's see, Psalm 119, if I had a guess off the top of my head, will tell us repeatedly, I'm guessing, I haven't even looked at this beforehand, because I was approaching this from a different perspective.
Okay.
But here, Psalm 119, verse 40, see, I have longed for your precepts, by your righteousness preserve me.
Yes.
Right? And throughout Psalm 119, there's these 10 different words for Torah. There's testimony, there's Torah, there's righteousness, there's your instructions, there's all these different words. And then Psalm 119, verse 142, your righteousness, your tzedakah is eternal, your teaching is true. And your teaching in Hebrew is your Torah is true. So the parallel of Torah there is tzedakah, right? It's the same word, or from the same word. So you have this idea of tzedakah can be Torah. Can it also be charity? So let's look at the meaning of charity. And we're going to pull up here in the dictionary, and they're going to say tzedakah is loyalty to the community and conduct, honesty, justice, justness of the divine judge, community loyalty. So we haven't even gotten to charity yet. Just cause, God's deeds of justice. These are the different definitions being given in a biblical Hebrew dictionary. It doesn't even give charity as one of them. There's some verses in Proverbs where you could read it maybe as charity, right? But it could also be that you're reading back a later meaning into Hebrew And really where that's coming from is this idea of tzedakah being a righteous act. So for example, Isaiah 64 verse 5, we have all become like an unclean thing, all of our virtues like a filthy rag. And what's virtues? It's the plural of tzedakah, right? It's a virtuous act. It's a righteous act.
That certainly wouldn't be charities in that situation.
It's not giving charity to the poor, right? How do they get to giving to the poor, right? To where that becomes the predominant meaning. So this word tzedakah often has the meaning of righteous deeds. And often we can see that, I'll give you an example, Jeremiah 33:15. In those days and at that time I will raise up a true branch of David's line. So this is the Messiah.
Yeah.
And he shall do what is just and right in the land. And the word there is tzedakah. So he's not giving charity to the poor.
That's right.
He's doing righteousness. He's doing righteous deeds. And we have this evolution from biblical Hebrew into post-biblical Hebrew, where tzedakah originally can be righteousness and hence righteous deeds. And then we have this idea, well, giving to the poor is a righteous deed. And then tzedakah then takes on the meaning of giving to the poor, right? And the Tanakh, it talks about giving to the poor. It has a completely different phraseology for how to do that. It's a whole expression, giving to the poor, guarding the poor, things like that, right? Not forgetting the Levite, right? But this is specific term, tzedakah, in the Tanakh generally doesn't have that connotation. If it has it at all, is arguable. So what my cousin is doing is he's taking it in the post-biblical sense, which could be, maybe Yeshua meant it that way, right? In this post-biblical sense of giving charity. It's entirely possible. And then they translated that based on this equivalence that they had found from the Tanakh to the Septuagint, where tzedakah is mechanically translated as righteousness. That's possible. I'm a bit skeptical if that's correct or not.